My alien roommate saw my equipment. Her shock was obvious. It was almost midnight when Jake finally dragged himself up the stairs to his apartment. Working the late shift at the observatory always left him exhausted, but tonight felt different. As he fumbled with his keys, he noticed something odd. There was a faint blue glow coming from under his door. His heart started racing. He lived alone, and he was absolutely sure he'd turned off all the lights before leaving. Slowly, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The sight that greeted him made him freeze in place. Standing in his kitchen, examining his microwave like it was some kind of ancient artifact, was someone who definitely wasn't human. She had skin that shimmered like oil on water, changing colors as she moved. Her eyes were larger than any human's, dark and reflective like polished stones. She was wearing something that looked like fabric but seemed to move on its own, shifting and adjusting around her body. She turned to look at him, and a small device floating near her shoulder made a crackling sound before speaking in perfect English.
Greetings. I am Zira.
You must be the residence owner. There appears to have been an error in my housing assignment. Jake stood there, mouth hanging open, still holding his keys. This had to be a dream. Maybe he'd fallen asleep at work. He pinched himself. Nope, still awake. The alien in his kitchen was still there, now opening his refrigerator and peering inside with intense curiosity. I'm sorry, what? Jake finally managed to say. Who are you? How did you get in here? Zira held up a small card that glowed with strange symbols. I am a doctoral student from the Kepler system. I'm participating in the intergalactic exchange program with your planet's universities. According to my assignment, this is temporary housing unit 7B. Is this not correct? Jake looked around his apartment. It was definitely his apartment. Same worn couch, same coffee-stained table, same pile of running shoes by the door. But
I live here. I've lived here for 3 years.
there's no exchange program housing here. The alien skin flickered through several shades of purple, which Jake somehow understood meant she was upset. Oh, this is most unfortunate. The housing coordinator mentioned there had been several filing errors this cycle. I was assured everything was arranged. She tapped the floating device, and holographic screens appeared in the air around her. Jake watched in amazement as she scrolled through what looked like official documents, her long fingers moving in ways human fingers couldn't. After a moment, her skin turned a deeper shade of blue. It appears you are correct. My actual assignment is in the university district, but that unit won't be available for processing until the next lunar cycle. That's approximately 3 of your weeks. She looked at him with those huge eyes, and despite everything, Jake felt a pang of sympathy. She looked lost and worried, colors rippling across her skin in waves. So you have nowhere to go? Jake asked, setting down his bag. I have several options, Zira said, though her translator couldn't quite hide the uncertainty in her voice. I could request emergency accommodation at the Intergalactic Embassy, though their facilities are currently at capacity due to the conference season. Or I could attempt to locate commercial lodging, though I'm not yet familiar with your currency exchange systems. Or I could sleep in the observation pod I arrived in, though it's not designed for extended habitation. Jake ran his hand through his hair, thinking. This was insane. Completely insane. He should call someone, right? But who? The police. What would he even say? Hello, there's an alien in my apartment, and she needs a place to stay? They'd think he'd lost his mind. He looked at Zira again. Despite her otherworldly appearance, There was something vulnerable about her. She was far from home, in a strange place with a housing mix-up that wasn't her fault. He'd been in tough spots before, too. When he'd first moved to the city for his job, he'd relied on the kindness of a friend who let him crash on their couch for a month. "Look," he said, making a decision he hoped he wouldn't regret. "I have a spare bedroom. It's small, and I've been using it for storage, but there's a bed in there. You can stay here until your paperwork gets sorted out. Just temporarily." Zira's skin brightened to a warm golden color. "That is extremely generous. I accept your offer. I will, of course, contribute to household expenses and maintain respectful boundaries."
Right. Yeah. Boundaries. Good idea.
Yeah. Jake suddenly realized he was having a conversation with an actual alien being in his apartment. At midnight. His brain was struggling to catch up with reality. "Okay, so, ground rules. We respect each other's space. We share the kitchen. You can use whatever you need. No experiments with strange technology after 10 p.m. because I need to sleep."
And please don't tell anyone else you're staying here until we figure this out properly.
These terms are acceptable. Zira extended her hand in what looked like an attempt at a human handshake. When Jake took it, her skin felt warm and slightly electric, like touching a phone screen. Over the next hour, Jake cleared out enough of the spare room for Zira to settle in. Bess. She was fascinated by everything. The light switch made her gasp with delight. Pang. The bathroom faucet caused her to call him in excitement, asking him to explain the water summoning device. When he showed her how the shower worked, she spent 20 minutes analyzing the shower head, asking questions about water pressure and temperature regulation that made his head spin. "Your species has developed quite efficient resource distribution systems," she said, making notes on a holographic pad that appeared whenever she gestured a certain way. "Though I notice you still rely heavily on manual controls rather than automated response systems. We like to do things ourselves sometimes," Jake said, yawning. It was past 1 a.m. now, and exhaustion was hitting him hard. Zira noticed, and her skin shifted to a softer, darker blue. "You require rest. I apologize for keeping you awake. My species only needs 4 hours of sleep per cycle, so I sometimes forget other beings have different requirements." 4 hours? That's it? Yes. We evolved on a planet with shorter days. More time for research and learning. She said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Jake showed her how to lock her door, how to adjust the room temperature, and where to find extra blankets if she needed them. As he finally headed to his own room, he turned back to see her standing in the hallway, her skin glowing softly in the darkness. "Thank you," she said through her translator. "Your kindness to a stranger is noted and appreciated." "No problem," Jake replied, though his mind was still reeling. "Welcome to Earth, I guess." As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Jake wondered what he'd just agreed to. Berg. 3 weeks with an alien roommate. What could possibly go wrong? The first week with Zira was like nothing Jake could have imagined. Every morning he'd wake up to find her already in the kitchen, carefully studying how the coffee maker worked or examining the nutritional labels on cereal boxes with intense scientific focus. She'd filled a notebook with observations about human food preparation, though she seemed genuinely disturbed by most of what humans ate. "You consume the reproductive cells of birds?" she asked one morning, watching him crack eggs into a pan. Her skin had turned a pale green color that Jake had learned meant confusion or mild disgust. "They're just eggs," Zira. They're good for protein. On my world, we synthesize all required nutrients. The concept of consuming products from other living creatures is considered quite primitive. She paused, then added quickly,
No offense intended to your cultural practices.
Jake had gotten used to these comments. Zira wasn't trying to be rude. She was genuinely curious about everything, approaching human life like a researcher studying a fascinating but bewildering subject. In return, she'd shared things about her own world. Her planet had 3 suns, cities that floated in the sky, and technology that made Earth's most advanced computers look like stone tools. But despite the wonder of having an alien roommate, Jake had maintained his normal routine, and that included his workouts. He'd been training for a marathon for 6 months now, and he wasn't about to stop just because he had unexpected company. Every evening after work, he'd change into his running clothes and set up his equipment in the living room. Tonight was leg day. Jake had moved the coffee table aside and laid out his yoga mat. His dumbbells were lined up by weight. His resistance bands hung from the pull-up bar he'd installed in the door frame last year, and his foam roller was ready for stretching afterward. He'd just finished his warm-up and was about to start his first set of squats when Zira's door opened. She stepped out, probably heading to the kitchen for one of her nutrient drinks, but she stopped the moment she saw him. Her eyes went wide. Wider than Jake had ever seen them. Her skin flashed through a rapid sequence of colors. Purple, then orange, then a bright yellow that Jake had never seen before. The translator device near her shoulder made a sound like static mixed with wind chimes. Aberration. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice higher than usual. Jake paused, dumbbell in each hand. "I'm working out. You know, exercising." "But why?" Zira moved closer, her head tilting at an angle that would have been impossible for a human. "Why are you deliberately creating physical strain for your body? Are you being punished for something? Is this a penalty system I'm not aware of?" Jake couldn't help but laugh. "No, it's not a punishment. It's exercise. It keeps me healthy and strong." Zira's skin cycled through more colors. She walked around him in a circle, studying him like he was an exhibit in a museum. "I don't understand." "You have technology. I've seen your vehicle." "You have devices that can transport you places. Why would you need to make yourself physically stronger?" "It's not just about strength," Jake explained, setting down the dumbbells. "It's about health. When humans exercise, it makes our hearts stronger, helps us live longer, reduces stress, makes us feel better mentally." "Feel better mentally from physical pain?" Zira's translator added what sounded like a note of disbelief. "This seems counterintuitive."
Jake picked up one of his lighter dumbbells and held it out to her.
"Bask. Here, try it. Do a bicep curl like this." He demonstrated the movement. Zira took the weight carefully, as if it might explode. She tried to copy his movement, but her arm bent in the wrong direction first. Her species had joints that moved differently than humans. When she finally managed something close to a curl, her arm trembled with the effort. "This is terrible," she said, setting the weight down quickly. "Bah. Why would anyone do this voluntarily? On my planet, we have developed technology to maintain our physical forms without such primitive methods. We have cellular regeneration chambers, gravitational adjustment pods, molecular optimization treatments. But don't you ever just, I don't know, want to move? To feel your body doing something?" Zira's skin turned a thoughtful shade of deep blue.
We have recreational activities, virtual reality experiences, mental puzzle challenges. Artistic creation through holographic manipulation.
But deliberate physical strain? No. We evolved past that need thousands of years ago. Jake sat down on his yoga mat and gestured for her to sit too. She folded herself down in a way that looked uncomfortable, but was probably natural for her.
Can I ask you something?
Do people on your planet have health problems, like things wrong with their bodies? Zira's colors dimmed slightly. Yes. Actually, there has been an increase in what your doctors might call chronic conditions. Weakened bone density, reduced muscle tissue, problems with our circulatory systems. Our scientists have attributed it to our sedentary lifestyles and over-reliance on technology for physical maintenance. Maybe that's because you stopped moving, Jake said gently. The human body is designed to move, to work, to challenge itself. When we don't, we get sick. Maybe your species is the same way, just further down that path. Yes. Zira was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through subtle shades of purple and blue. That is an interesting hypothesis, and somewhat troubling if accurate. She looked at the exercise equipment spread around the room. Show me more of these activities. I wish to understand this better. Jake grinned. All right, but fair warning. You're probably going to be sore tomorrow. My species doesn't experience muscle soreness in the same way humans do. Our cellular structure is different. We'll see about that, Jake said, standing up and offering her a hand. Let's start with something simple. The next 2 weeks transformed Jake's apartment in ways he never expected. What started as Zira's confused observation of his workout routine had evolved into something like a scientific mission for her. Every evening when he came home from the observatory, she'd be waiting with questions, notes, and increasingly elaborate theories about human fitness. Psst. She'd started creating detailed charts on her holographic display, tracking his heart rate, breathing patterns, and muscle engagement during different exercises. She'd even used some kind of scanning technology to create a 3-dimensional model of his cardiovascular system, which she'd proudly shown him one evening. Seeing his own heart beating in glowing blue hologram form was both amazing and slightly unsettling. Bay. Your species has developed a remarkably inefficient yet strangely effective approach to physical wellness, she'd told him, her skin glowing with excitement. The redundancy built into your exercise routines actually creates adaptive stress responses that improve overall system function. It's quite clever, in a primitive sort of way. Jake had learned to take her backhanded compliments in stride. Thanks, I think. But tonight was different. Bathe. Tonight, Zira had a request. I would like to attempt these exercises myself, she announced as Jake was setting up his equipment. Her skin was a determined shade of orange that he'd learned meant she'd made up her mind about something. For scientific purposes, of course. I want to understand the physical experience, not just observe it. Jake hesitated. Are you sure? I mean, your body is built differently than mine. I don't want you to hurt yourself. I have analyzed the biomechanical requirements extensively. With modifications to account for my different joint structure and muscle density, I believe I can safely participate.
She gestured, and her holographic display showed diagrams of exercise movements adapted for her body type.
I've calculated the appropriate adjustments. You really did your homework, Jake said, impressed despite himself. Okay, but we start slow. Really slow. And if anything hurts, you stop immediately. Deal? Agreed. They started with basic stretching. Zira could bend in ways that made Jake wince, her joints rotating in directions that seemed impossible. But when it came to holding a position, she struggled. Her muscles, while flexible, weren't used to sustained engagement. This is harder than it appears, she admitted, her skin flickering between orange and purple. I'm experiencing what I believe you would call muscle fatigue. That's normal, babe. That's how it's supposed to feel. Next came the resistance bands. Jake showed her how to loop them around her hands and pull. The first attempt went hilariously wrong. Zira pulled with too much force at the wrong angle, and the band slipped. She went flying backward, arms windmilling, and landed sprawled across the couch with a surprised yelp that her translator rendered as something between a gasp and a laugh. For a moment, Jake stood frozen, worried she'd been hurt. Then Zira started making a sound that needed no translation. Bay. She was laughing, not the polite, measured responses he'd heard from her before, but genuine, uncontrolled laughter that made her whole body shake and her skin flash through a rainbow of colors. Jake started laughing too. Soon they were both doubled over, tears streaming down his face while Zira's skin went through color combinations he'd never seen. It was the first time since she'd arrived at the weirdness of the situation just melted away. In that moment, she wasn't an alien, and he wasn't a human. They were just two people laughing at a silly accident. Okay, Zira said when she could finally speak again, wiping moisture from her eyes with a gesture that looked remarkably human. Perhaps I need more instruction on proper technique. Over the next hour, Jake guided her through modified versions of his routine. Push-ups were a disaster. Her arms bent the wrong way and she kept forgetting she had more joints to coordinate than a human did. Squats worked better once they figured out the right stance for her different hip structure. The yoga mat became her favorite piece of equipment because, as she put it, this provides excellent traction and cushioning for an activity that requires neither technology nor power source. Elegant simplicity. But the real breakthrough came with the foam roller. Jake showed her how to use it for muscle recovery, rolling it slowly under different muscle groups. Zira tried it, and her skin immediately shifted to a warm, peaceful gold color. "Oh," she said softly. "This is pleasant. Very pleasant."
We have nothing like this on my world. Sometimes the simple stuff is the best, Jake said.
As the days went on, Zira became more coordinated. She started joining Jake for his evening routines, though she modified everything for her own body. She couldn't do a regular push-up, but she could do a variation using her extra joint flexibility that Jake couldn't even attempt. Her squats looked strange but worked the same muscle groups. She even invented her own exercises, combinations of human movements with techniques from her own planet's ancient practices. Before we developed our technology, my ancestors engaged in physical training, she explained one evening. We have historical records of movement practices designed to harmonize body and mind. They were abandoned centuries ago as obsolete. But perhaps they weren't. Jake watched as she demonstrated something that looked like a cross between Tai Chi and a dance, her body moving in flowing patterns that seemed to defy gravity. It was beautiful and strange, and when she finished, her skin glowed with a satisfaction he'd come to recognize. "You're really getting into this," he observed. "I am experiencing something unexpected," Zira said, sitting down beside him. "When I engage in these physical activities, I feel more present in my body, more aware. On my world, we spend so much time in our minds, in virtual spaces, in intellectual pursuits. We've forgotten what it feels like to simply exist in a physical form." "That's exactly it," Jake said, excited that she understood. "That's what I've been trying to explain. It's not just about getting stronger or healthier. It's about being connected to yourself." Zira's skin rippled with thoughtful colors. "I believe I'm beginning to understand why your species values this so highly." There's a kind of meditation in movement, yes, a way of thinking without thinking. Yeah, exactly. When I'm running or working out, my mind gets quiet. All the stress and worries just fade away. It's just me and the movement. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just breathing. Outside, the city sounds drifted through the window. Sirens in the distance, someone's music playing, the eternal hum of traffic. Normal human life continuing all around them, while inside this small apartment, a human and an alien sat together, sharing a moment of understanding that crossed the stars. "Thank you for teaching me this," Zira said finally. "Becked. I came to your planet to study your technology, your societies, your academic achievements. I didn't expect to learn something so fundamental about existence itself." Jake smiled. "Sometimes the best lessons are the ones you don't expect." Zira stood up, stretching in that impossible way of hers. "Tomorrow, I want to try something you mentioned before. Running?"
You said you do this outdoors, in nature? Yeah, I run in the park most mornings before work. May I join you?
"I'm curious about this practice of moving through space without a destination in mind." "Sure," Jake said. "But fair warning, jogging with me means getting up at 6 a.m. Zira's skin brightened. "I'm usually awake by 4. 6 is quite late for me." "This will be an adventure." The alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning, and Jake seriously questioned his life choices. He'd agreed to take Zira running in the park, but now that the moment had arrived, he was having second thoughts. How exactly did you take an alien jogging in public? Would people stare? Would someone call the authorities? Us. Would this end up all over social media? But when he stumbled into the kitchen, Zira was already there, practically vibrating with excitement. She'd somehow fashioned a running outfit that looked almost human, though the fabric still had that strange quality of moving on its own. She'd even figured out how to make her skin stay a consistent peachy color that could pass for human at a distance. "I've been researching proper running attire and technique," she announced, showing him her holographic display filled with running videos and biomechanical analyses. "I believe I understand the basic principles. Understanding and doing are two different things," Jake said, pouring coffee. "But we'll take it slow." 20 minutes later, they were at the park entrance as the sun started painting the sky pink and orange. It was Jake's favorite time of day. The air was cool and fresh. The park was mostly empty except for a few early morning runners and dog walkers, and the world felt full of possibility. "So we just start moving?" Zira asked, bouncing slightly on her feet in a way that looked almost human. "Yep! Just follow my pace. If you need to stop, just tell me." They started jogging down the main path. For the first few minutes, Zira's movements were awkward and mechanical. She was thinking too much, trying to control every motion. Her legs moved stiffly, her arms pumped at odd angles, and she kept looking down at her feet. Bound. "Don't think so hard," Jake called over. "Just let your body find its rhythm." "How does one stop thinking?" "Thinking is what I do. Focus on something else. Listen to the birds. Feel the wind. Count your breaths. Gradually, something shifted. Zira's movements became smoother, more natural. Her stride evened out, and her breathing fell into a steady pattern. They ran past the pond where ducks were waking up, through a section of path lined with oak trees, around the community garden where early morning volunteers were already tending plants. A couple of other runners passed them, offering friendly morning waves. An older woman walking her dog smiled at them. A group of people doing Tai Chi in the grass moved through their forms with peaceful concentration. Normal park life. Everyone too absorbed in their own morning routines to give them more than a passing glance. After about 15 minutes, Jake slowed to a walk. How are you feeling? Zira's skin had started to show hints of her natural colors underneath the peachy disguise, shimmering slightly with exertion. "This is extraordinary," she said, her voice breathless but excited. "I've never experienced anything like this. The movement, the environment, the other people sharing this space. On my world, exercise happens in isolated chambers with controlled conditions. This is so much more alive." They found a bench overlooking the pond and sat down to rest. The morning was warming up, and the park was slowly filling with more people. Kids on bikes, people walking to work, a group of teenagers skateboarding in the distance. "Can I tell you something?" Jake said, watching the ducks glide across the water. "When I first started running, it wasn't really about fitness. Guys, I was going through a rough time. New job, new city, didn't know anyone. I felt really alone. But when I started coming here in the mornings, I realized I wasn't alone. All these people, doing their own thing, but we're all part of the same community somehow. The guy who walks his 3 dogs at exactly 6:15. The woman who does yoga by that big tree. The running group that meets every Wednesday. We don't really talk much, but we see each other. We nod. Burrs. We're connected." Zira listened intently, her skin shifting to that deep blue color that meant she was processing something important. "This is what I was missing in my observations. Exercise for humans isn't just about the physical body. It's about connection. To yourself, to others, to the environment around you." "Exactly," Jake said. "All your technology can optimize the physical benefits, but it can't give you this." He gestured at the park around them, alive with morning activity. Presence. The feeling of being part of something bigger. A familiar face jogged up to their bench. It was Tom, one of the regulars from Jake's Wednesday running group. "Hey, Jake! Haven't seen you at the group runs lately." Brith. "Yeah, sorry, man. Work's been crazy, And I've had an unexpected house guest." He gestured to Zira, hoping she'd remember to keep her skin color stable. "Nice to meet you," Tom said, extending a hand to Zira. She shook it, and Jake was relieved to see she'd practiced enough to make it look natural. "You guys should come to the group run tomorrow morning. We're doing an easy 5-mile loop, stopping for coffee after." "Good way to meet people." "We might do that," Jake said, glancing at Zira, who was practically glowing with interest. After Tom jogged off, Zira turned to Jake with excitement radiating from her very pores. "A group run!" Multiple individuals engaging in coordinated physical activity for mutual benefit and social bonding. This is precisely the kind of cultural practice I need to document. "It's also just fun," Jake said, smiling. "Not everything has to be research." "But that's what makes it fascinating," Zira insisted. "Your species has created something beautiful without even realizing it. You've turned a basic biological need for movement into art, into community, into therapy, into celebration. My people optimized efficiency but lost the joy. We solved problems but created new ones. Burial." They sat quietly for a while, watching the park wake up fully. The sun was higher now, warming their faces. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing music from a portable speaker. A group of older adults was starting a walking meditation circle. "On my planet," Zira said softly, We have everything we need. Perfect health through technology. Unlimited knowledge through neural linking. Instant transportation. Total climate control. But I've been here for 3 weeks. And I've learned something uncomfortable. Having everything you need isn't the same as having everything that makes life worth living. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he just put his hand on her shoulder in a gesture of understanding. Her skin warmed under his touch, cycling through gentle colors. "Thank you for showing me this," she continued. "When I return to my world, I will have much to share. Not just data and observations, but understanding. Real understanding of what it means to be alive in a body, to share space with others, to challenge yourself not because you have to, but because the challenge itself has value."
You're going to try to change things back home, aren't you? Jake asked.
Psst. "I'm going to try," Sira said, her skin brightening with determination. "I don't know if anyone will listen. My people are set in their ways. But perhaps if I can show them what I've experienced, if I can make them understand what they're missing, some will be willing to try something new, or rather, something very, very old." They started jogging again, taking a longer loop through the park. This time, Zira's movements were confident and smooth. She was smiling, her expression so human in its joy that Jake almost forgot how strange she'd seemed when she first arrived. They ran past the playground, the tennis courts, the little amphitheater where someone would probably play music later. And for those moments, running through the morning light with an alien who was learning to be present in her body, Jake felt a deep sense of gratitude. He'd expected to teach Zira about human fitness. Instead, she'd reminded him why it mattered in the first place. The last week of Zira's stay arrived faster than either of them expected. Her university housing had finally been processed, and she'd been scheduled to present her research findings to the Intergalactic Academic Council at the end of the week. After that, she'd move to the campus housing and continue her studies there. The apartment would be quiet again, normal again. Jake found himself feeling surprisingly sad about that. They'd fallen into such a comfortable routine. Morning runs in the park where Zira had become a regular fixture and even made friends with some of the other joggers. Evening workouts in the apartment where they'd challenge each other with increasingly creative exercise combinations. Late-night conversations about their different worlds, their hopes, their fears, the nature of existence. Jake had learned more about the universe in 3 weeks than he'd learned in his entire career at the observatory, but Zira had been secretive about her presentation. She'd been working on it constantly, holed up in her room with holographic displays and data streams, muttering to herself in her own language. When Jake asked what she was working on, she'd just smile mysteriously and say, "You'll see." The night before her presentation, Jake came home from work to find Zira pacing nervously in the living room. Rest her. Skin was cycling rapidly through colors. Something he'd learned meant she was anxious. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting down his bag. "I'm presenting tomorrow to some of the most advanced minds in the galaxy," she said, her translator catching the tremor in her voice. "What if they don't understand? What if they dismiss my findings as primitive or irrelevant? Your findings about exercise and community. It's more than that now." She pulled up her holographic display and Jake saw the title of her presentation, "The Wisdom of Unnecessary Effort."
What humanity can teach advanced civilizations.
Wow, Jake said, reading through her abstract. You're really going for it. I have to, Zira said, her skin settling into determined orange. I can't just present dry data about human exercise routines.
I need to make them feel what I've felt, understand what I've understood. But I'm afraid words won't be enough. Then show them, Jake suggested. Don't just tell them about it, demonstrate. Zira's eyes widened. A live demonstration. In front of the council? Why not? You're good at this now. And nothing proves a point like showing instead of telling. A slow smile spread across Zira's face, and her skin brightened to gold. Yes. Yes. That's exactly what I need to do. The next morning, Jake asked for a few hours off work. He wanted to be there for Zira's presentation, even if it was just via video link. She'd been so nervous that her skin had turned almost transparent, showing the complex system of vessels beneath. Breath. You're going to be great, he assured her as she prepared to leave. Just speak from the heart. Bet. Or whatever organ your species uses for emotions. She laughed, some of the tension leaving her body. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you. The presentation was being broadcast from the university's Quantum Communications Center. Jake watched from his laptop, connected through a viewing link Zira had sent him. The council chamber appeared on his screen, a vast space that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Beings from dozens of different species sat in floating seats, their forms ranging from humanoid to completely alien geometries that hurt to look at directly. Zira walked to the center of the chamber, looking small but determined. She'd chosen to appear in her natural form, skin shimmering with nervous energy, rather than trying to disguise herself. Honored council members, she began, her voice steady despite her obvious nerves. I have spent the past month studying human civilization, specifically their approach to physical wellness and exercise. What I discovered challenged everything I thought I knew about progress and advancement. She brought up her first display showing data on human health outcomes related to exercise, then comparative data from her own species, showing the increase in chronic health problems since they'd abandoned physical movement in favor of technological solutions.
We assumed that eliminating unnecessary physical effort was progress, she continued.
But humans have shown me that some effort is never unnecessary. It serves purposes we've forgotten we needed. One of the council members, a being that looked like floating crystals, interrupted. Are you suggesting we should regress to primitive physical labor? Not labor, Zira said firmly. Engagement. Presence. Connection. She pulled up videos of the park, of people running together, doing yoga, playing sports. Humans don't exercise because they have to. They do it because it brings them joy, community, peace, and purpose. Things our advanced technologies cannot provide. Another council member, this one vaguely insectoid, spoke up. Inspiration. These are subjective emotional states, hardly suitable for academic study. Then let me show you something objective, Zira said. She stepped into an open space in the chamber. I will demonstrate a basic human exercise routine that I have learned and adapted for my physiology. Jake watched in amazement as Zira began to move. Psst. She started with stretches, her body flowing through positions that showcased both human technique and her own species' natural flexibility. Then she moved into strength exercises, modified versions of squats and push-ups that she'd mastered over the past weeks. Finally, she transitioned into something that looked like a combination of yoga and the ancient movement practices from her own world, creating something entirely new. As she moved, her skin began to glow, cycling through colors that Jake had learned to read. Gold for joy, blue for peace, purple for concentration, green for growth. She was telling a story with her body, showing the council what words couldn't express. When she finished, slightly breathless but glowing with satisfaction, the chamber was silent. Then, one by one, the council members began to respond. Some with skepticism, but others with genuine curiosity. The floating crystals being asked if she could share her adapted routine. A aquatic-looking delegate mentioned similar health problems in their own population. An elderly humanoid remarked that their ancestors also had movement practices that had been lost to time. Jake watched as Zira fielded questions with confidence and passion, speaking about muscle memory and endorphins, about community building and mental health, about the difference between existing and truly living. She shared recordings from the running group, testimonials from other alien exchange students she'd been teaching, physiological data that proved the benefits. But the most important data I have, she said near the end of her presentation, is personal pay. When I arrived on Earth, I was disconnected from my body. I existed primarily in my mind, as most of my species does. Through learning these human practices, I rediscovered what it means to inhabit a physical form with intention and joy. I became more than just a mind carrying around a body.
I became whole. The presentation ended with a standing ovation from at least half the council.
The other half looked thoughtful, which Zira later told Jake was almost as good as approval from such traditionally conservative beings. That evening, Jake and Zira celebrated with pizza from his favorite local place. Zira had finally gotten over her initial horror at human food and developed a surprising fondness for vegetarian pizza. "They're already talking about it," she said, scrolling through messages on her holographic display. "But several council members want to implement pilot programs on their worlds. Others want me to present at their universities.
There's even talk of creating an intergalactic movement exchange program. You started a fitness revolution across multiple planets," Jake said, shaking his head in disbelief.
"That's insane." "It's wonderful," Zira corrected, her skin glowing with happiness. "And it's all because you let a strange alien crash in your spare room and taught her how to do a push-up." They laughed together, comfortable and easy like old friends. Outside, the city hummed with life. Tomorrow, Zira would move to her new housing. Their daily routine would end. But something had changed in both of them that would last much longer than 3 weeks. "I made something for you," Zira said suddenly. She pulled out a small device, about the size of a phone. "It's a hybrid fitness tracker. It combines human exercise science with adaptive technology from my world. It can create custom workouts, track your progress in ways Earth technology can't, and even project virtual training partners when you want company on runs." Jake took it carefully, touched by the gift. "This is amazing. Thank you. There's one more feature," Zira said, showing him the settings. "It has a communication function. Direct quantum link. No matter where I am in the galaxy, we can talk, share workouts. Stay connected." "I'd like that," Jake said sincerely.
"I'm going to miss having you around. I'm only moving across the city, not across the galaxy," Zira pointed out. "I'll still be here for another year."
And I was thinking, maybe I could join your Wednesday running group regularly, if that's acceptable. "Are you kidding?" "They'd love that. Tom's been asking about you." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, Zira's plans to continue her research, to write a book about her experiences, to develop a comprehensive program for reintroducing movement practices to advanced civilizations. Jake's marathon training, his own growing understanding of why he ran, what it meant to him beyond just the physical benefits. "You know what's funny?" Jake said as they were cleaning up. "I thought I was doing you a favor letting you stay here, but you've changed my life just as much as I apparently changed yours." "How so?" "I've been running for years, working out, following my routine, but I never really thought about why. It was just something I did. You made me see it differently. Made me appreciate it more. Understand what it really means. Zira's skin shifted to a warm, soft gold. Then we've both taught each other. That's the best kind of exchange. Later, after Zira had gone to her room to finish packing, Jake stood at his window looking out at the city lights. In a few days, he'd be back to his normal routine. Apartment to himself. Quiet mornings. No holographic displays or color-changing roommates. But nothing would really be the same. He'd learned too much. Seen too much. Understood too much about the bigger universe out there and his small but significant place in it. His phone buzzed with a message. It was from Zira, even though she was just one room away. Thank you for seeing a person instead of an alien. For teaching me that movement is meditation. For showing me that sometimes the best technology is your own body. You gave me more than shelter. You gave me understanding. Jake smiled and typed back. You showed me that the simple things I took for granted are actually pretty amazing. Thanks for being the weirdest and best roommate I never expected to have. 3 weeks ago, an alien had appeared in his kitchen, confused and lost and needing a place to stay. Now she was a friend, a student, a teacher, and someone who had fundamentally changed how he saw the world and his place in it. Sometimes the best gifts come in the strangest packages. Breath. And sometimes teaching someone else helps you understand yourself. Jake picked up his running shoes for tomorrow's morning run. Zira had already confirmed she'd join him one last time before moving. As he set them by the door, he smiled, thinking about how strange and wonderful life could be when you opened your door to the unexpected. Brand, the universe was bigger and stranger and more beautiful than he'd ever imagined. And it all started with an alien who was shocked by his exercise equipment.